In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon His last and beloved Messenger Muhammad, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all. The title of this presentation is Sensing Satan Using Magnetic Resonance Imaging. So in this presentation, I will show, brothers and sisters, how to sense Satan and how to prove the mechanism by which Satan affects us, as stated in the Quran, using a device called magnetic resonance imaging, MRI. So to start with, Allah God Almighty, in the last revelation to people in the Quran, explains to us in details the scientific mechanism on how Satan affects each and every one of us. And no one is immune from this, from the effect of Satan, I mean. And in the Quran, Allah God Almighty teaches us how Satan affects us, as stated in the following verse, which is verse number 4 of chapter 114 of the Quran, which reads, "From the evil of the whisperer who hides." So in this verse we can learn completely the scientific mechanism by which Satan affects each and every one of us, where the Almighty states that there is evil from the whisperer, meaning Satan whispering to us. So Allah is telling us here and teaching us that Satan affects you by his voice, meaning he talks to you. So we learn from Islam and from the Quran that each and every one of us has a companion devil, that when you are born there is a devil assigned to you at birth. So this companion devil is Satan. He affects you by talking to you, he whispers to you, but at the same time he hides from you, as stated in the verse, "From the evil of the whisperer who hides." So he hides from you, and so meaning that he doesn't want you to feel his presence. So how can Satan talk to you at the same time hide from you? Now the only way that he can accomplish this is if he matches his voice to your own voice. And your own voice is the voice you hear in your head when you are thinking quietly to yourself. So when you are thinking quietly, you hear a voice in your head exactly identical to the voice you speak with, and that's the voice of yourself. So what Satan does, he matches his voice with regards to tone, languages, your style of speech, to the one you hear in your head. So you hear thoughts in your head, they pop up in your head, and you think that yourself is telling you this, while actually it's companion devil telling you ideas of harm to hurt yourself and others, ideas of lust and perverted sexual ideas, and blasphemy. So we understood this physical mechanism or scientific mechanism, how Satan affects us from the Quran. Also, in another verse in the Quran, in chapter 17 verse 64, which reads, this translation, "And before them gradually those whom you can among them with your voice, make assaults on them with your imagination-induced feelings, mutually share with them wealth and children, and make promises to them, but Satan promises them nothing but deceit." So again in the Quran, Allah is telling us that Satan, he befools us gradually with his voice. So you can see, brothers and sisters, the emphasis in the Quran that Satan affects you with his voice, that he talks to you and he hides from you. He convinces you of his ideas and gives you justification for them and course of action. Now, coming to how to prove this scientifically, how to prove this physical mechanism that Satan talks to us in our mind. Now we will use here magnetic resonance imaging. Now just a quick kind of explanation for this device. It's like the one you see on the screen. This is a magnetic resonance imaging device. It can show the inside of the human body using a phenomenon called magnetic resonance. Now there is kind of a modification for this device nowadays. It's called functional MRI, and this means that it can show you the inside of the body during action when it's functioning. And I'll focus here on using functional magnetic resonance imaging to see the activity of the brain. So as you can see on the screen, this is the human brain, and superimposed on it these red regions. This is using functional magnetic resonance imaging. It shows different locations of the brain during functioning. For example, the visual cortex or the auditory cortex or the motor cortex. Now, so what people did, psychologists, they were trying to find the cause of obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. It's a mental disorder. So what they did, that they brought a person who's labeled mentally ill. He has OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and they placed that person in the MRI in a completely quiet room, soundproof, completely quiet, and they noticed something quite remarkable. They noticed that his brain, his auditory cortex, the region in the brain responsible for hearing, it's behaving, is functioning as if that person is hearing somebody talking to him. Let me reiterate this point again. A very famous experiment done on people labeled mentally ill. They placed them in an MRI device, functional MRI, in a completely quiet room, soundproof room. And what they found, that his brain, his auditory cortex, his location in the brain responsible for hearing, it's acting exactly as if somebody is talking to him. And scientists, they were completely baffled by this. Where is this external voice coming from? Now, in modern psychology, there is no answer for this. But in Islam, there is. That is Satan, by matching his voice to the one you think with, and he's another entity, different than you, but he's talking to you. So this is a remarkable sign of Allah God Almighty that proves and testifies the truthfulness of the teachings of the Quran. So people using functional magnetic resonance imaging, they noticed the brain with people suffering from mental disturbances. It's acting as if he's hearing external voice. And to be noted here, that this phenomenon, that the brain behaves as if he's hearing external thoughts, it occurs with all people, not mentally people with mental disturbances, but it's a higher level with people with mental disturbances. But even if they put a person which they label healthy, the brain behaves as if it's hearing external voices. And again, from the Quran, we learn that this external voice is Satan whispering to us by a voice matching one we think with. So we see, brothers and sisters, how Allah God Almighty teaches us the Quran out of His mercy, because Allah wants us to be saved from this Satan. Because with this voice, He convinces you in your mind to kill people, to commit adultery, to blaspheme against Allah, God Almighty, and His Messenger Muhammad. So Allah wants to save you from this enemy. And to know how to be saved from Satan and how the cure for these thoughts, please visit my website at www.quran-miracle.com, and you can email me at zaidquran@gmail.com, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all.